And the last one will shock you. Just imagine. London in 1918, months before the end of World War I. A city balancing fear and hope. Streets alive with energy, yet shadowed by war. Into this fragile moment walks an American traveler with a film camera. His name was Elias Burton Holmes. What he captured wasn't just landmarks or tourist sites. He recorded a hidden story, a capital under strain, a people enduring, and even a baseball game played before royalty. This is London like you've never seen before. And once you step inside, you'll never see the past the same way again. The traveler with a camera. Before YouTube, before Netflix, even before television, there was Elias Burton Holmes. Born in 1870, he made a career out of traveling the world, carrying a camera, and turning his journeys into what he called travel logs. He would return to America, rent out theaters, and present these films alongside live lectures. Audiences who had never left their hometowns suddenly saw Paris, Cairo, Tokyo, and in 1918, London. Holmes wasn't just a filmmaker, he was a storyteller, a bridge between cultures. Every reel he shot was part documentary, part adventure, part education. And when he arrived in London during the closing chapters of World War I, he gave us something rare, a snapshot of a city on the edge of victory, but still living with loss, a city at war. To understand London in 1918, imagine a place caught between pride and exhaustion. The war had lasted 4 years. Families rationed food, coal, even clothing. Air raids by German Zeppelins and bombers had scarred the city. Yet, life went on. People still commuted, shopped, gathered in parks. London was determined to endure. Holmes's camera captured iconic landmarks. Westminster with its Gothic towers, St. Paul's Cathedral standing tall as a spiritual anchor, and Cleopatra's Needle by the Thames, a reminder of Britain's empire stretching across the globe. At the Tower of London, he didn't just see history, he saw soldiers training. This was no museum piece. The city's ancient fortress was alive with military exercises, linking medieval walls with modern war. Asterisk. Every day, London. What makes this film so haunting is not just the monuments, but the people. Holmes turned his lens on ordinary Londoners. You see them in their wartime coats and hats, children skipping down streets where horse-drawn carts mixed with trams. These aren't actors, but real lives paused on film for us to witness a century later. Imagine walking those streets yourself, the clatter of boots on cobblestones, the distant whistle of trains, the chatter of markets. Even in the middle of global conflict, the rhythm of city life refused to stop. Watching this footage today feels like stepping through a portal, part familiar, part foreign. The buildings remain, but the people remind us of how much has changed. July 4th, 1918. And then, the most surprising twist, July 4th, 1918, American Independence Day. On that day, Londoners witnessed something they had never seen before. A baseball game. The U.S. Army faced off against the U.S. Navy at Chelsea Football Ground. Nearly 18,000 spectators filled the stands. But here's the detail that truly shocks. King George V and Queen Mary were in attendance. Think about that. The King of England, during wartime, sitting in a stadium, watching America's national pastime, shaking hands with American soldiers, smiling as a game, foreign to his own people, played out before him. This wasn't just sport. It was diplomacy, culture, and morale, all in one extraordinary moment. Why baseball mattered. For American soldiers, baseball was more than a pastime. It was a piece of home, a reminder of who they were and what they were fighting for. For Londoners, it was a spectacle, something exotic, fast-paced, unlike the cricket they knew. And for the king, it was a public gesture of solidarity, a way to honor America's growing role in the war. This game symbolized something bigger, that two nations, once divided by revolution, were now united in survival. It was freedom on display, not through speeches or treaties, but through bats, gloves, and cheers. The footage Holmes captured makes it almost unbelievable today, but it really happened. Asterisk. The politics of 1918 London. When we think of London in 1918, it's easy to picture the monuments, the soldiers, even that baseball game before the king. But behind those images was another London, a political powerhouse that was shaping not just the war, but the entire future of the world. At the center of it all stood Prime Minister David Lloyd George, often called the Welsh Wizard. He was a master of political survival, a man who had risen from modest beginnings to lead Britain through its darkest hour. His speeches promised the people that their sacrifices in the trenches would not be in vain. He spoke of creating a land fit for heroes to live in. To a war-weary public, those words offered hope. But in reality, Britain was under crushing debt, its economy fragile, its people restless. Inside Westminster, which Burton Holmes's camera captured from the outside, politicians debated questions that carried life or death weight. Should Britain push for unconditional victory, no matter the cost? Could the nation endure another season of rationing, another wave of casualty lists posted in the newspapers? And what about the shape of the peace that would come? Would Germany be punished so severely that future generations would seek revenge? In those halls, the seeds of future conflict were already being sown. But politics in London in 1918 weren't confined to the grand speeches of Parliament. In the streets, ordinary people were finding their voices. Women, who had taken on men's jobs in factories, on farms, and even in offices during the war, began demanding recognition. In February 1918, the Representation of the People Act granted the vote to women over 30 who met certain property qualifications. A huge step, but still not equality. Holmes's camera didn't capture their marches or their banners, but the energy of social change was in the air with every street scene he filmed. Workers, too, were restless. Trade unions grew in power, organizing strikes that threatened to paralyze the wartime economy. Soldiers on leave, exhausted from the mud of the Western Front, gathered in pubs and barracks, murmuring about the cost of war and the slim promises of the politicians. Many wondered, if peace was near, what kind of world would they return to? Would there be jobs, housing, dignity, or technology in 1918, London? When Burton Holmes carried his camera through the streets of London in 1918, he was walking through a city on the edge of technological transformation. The London he filmed was not just about war, politics, or tradition. It was also about machines, innovations, and the rapid march of modern life. By 1918, London was already one of the most electrified cities in the world. Streetlights glowed at night, powered not by flickering gas, but by electricity. Holmes's camera might show dark stone buildings, but just out of frame were the wires and lamps that kept the city alive after sunset. To a Londoner in 1918, the sight of electric light was ordinary. To us, looking back, it was the foundation of the modern city. Transport was another symbol of change. Alongside horse-drawn carts and bicycles, Holmes would have seen electric trams gliding through the streets, their bells cutting through the noise of the city. London's famous underground, the Tube, had already been running for over 50 years, and parts of it were fully electric. Soldiers and civilians alike traveled beneath the city in a system that today we still use. But in 1918, it must have felt like stepping into the future. Automobiles were spreading fast, though they were still a luxury for the wealthy. Taxis, delivery vans, and military trucks rattled along the same roads as horses. And above it all, the skies were no longer empty. The war had introduced Londoners to a frightening new technology: airplanes. German Zeppelins and bombers had brought terror from above, and in response, Britain pushed its own aviation technology forward. By 1918, the Royal Air Force had just been founded, and Londoners had grown used to glancing upward, listening for engines in the sky. Communication, too, was changing the way London lived. Telegraph wires and telephone lines crisscrossed the city, carrying news faster than ever before. Newspapers, powered by modern printing presses, delivered updates from the front lines every morning. Imagine the experience. Holmes's audience in America could watch silent, moving pictures of London, while Londoners themselves were already beginning to live in a world of instant headlines and voices transmitted over wires. And let's not forget the technology that made all of this possible. Holmes's own film camera. The bigger picture. Holmes's film isn't just moving images, it's resilience in motion. It shows a city that refused to collapse under bombs and hunger, a monarchy adapting to modern times, soldiers who, even while facing the brutality of trench warfare, could laugh, cheer, and celebrate. What makes the footage so powerful is contrast. The solemn architecture of Westminster, followed by the joy of a baseball crowd. The ancient Tower of London hosting soldiers of a new war. London in 1918 was a city between worlds, the old and the new, the medieval and the modern, the grieving and the hopeful. Legacy. When we look back at this 1918 film, we don't just see stone buildings and silent crowds. We see human stories, families, soldiers, monarchs, and travelers, all crossing paths in one of history's turning points. Burton Holmes may not have realized it then, but he was creating one of the earliest cinematic records of London in wartime, a gift for generations. His work influenced not just future filmmakers, but the entire way we think about travel documentaries today. Without him, we might not have this window into a London caught between war and peace. Call to curiosity. So next time you walk past St. Paul's or see a baseball game on TV, remember this forgotten connection. In 1918, London was a city of shadows and surprises, of grief and hope. Thanks to Burton Holmes, we can still witness it more than a century later. And now, let me ask you, what would shock you the most if you suddenly woke up in London, 1918? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more hidden stories of history. Asterisk.